The main event for UFC 249, Tony Ferguson vs. Khabib Nurmagomedov, is the most competitive fight in UFC history. I understand how that might sound like some hyperbolic statement used to trick the uninformed fan into getting hyped for an event, but I assure you, that's not what I'm doing. The lightweight division is not only the deepest and most competitive division in the UFC, it is also the deepest and most competitive division in the entire sport of mixed martial arts. You would be hard-pressed to find any professional MMA journalist, analyst, or hardcore fan that would disagree with me on that statement. The lightweight division is an absolute shark tank of world-class competitors, and among the many championship caliber fighters in the UFC stable, Khabib and Tony are simply cut from a different cloth. After Khabib's epic rivalry with Conor McGregor, I feel like most fans are aware of his skill set and unbelievable 28-0 record. But not as many casual MMA fans are as familiar with Tony Ferguson's resume. Tony Ferguson is 15-1 in the UFC, and Tony's only loss during that span was via decision in a contest where Tony broke his arm so severely that he had to have surgery and take over a year off in order to heal. Since that loss, Tony has won 12 consecutive fights, the longest win streak in UFC lightweight history, with 9 finishes in those 12 wins, and has accrued 10 post-fight bonuses over that stretch, including 8 bonuses in his last 8 fights. Tony isn't just one of the greatest and winningest fighters in UFC history, he's also one of the most entertaining. Tony always takes giant risks in fights, and he still wins. To give you an idea of how long Tony's win streak is, the last time Tony Ferguson lost a fight, Ronda Rousey hadn't even made her UFC debut yet. Think about what an incredible star Rousey was. She got into the UFC, became one of the biggest stars in the history of the sport, quit the UFC, and has since become a movie and WWE superstar. In all of that time, Tony Ferguson has not lost a single fight. If you don't find that to be a jaw-dropping anecdote about Tony's win streak, then I don't know what would impress you. Meanwhile, Khabib is also on a 12-fight win streak in the UFC, and he has consistently taken on the toughest competition in the world's most competitive weight class. I would argue that Khabib's 28-0 professional MMA record is the most impressive win streak in the history of combat sports. Some people might disagree and point to Floyd Mayweather's 50-0 boxing record, but to that, I would say that Floyd strategically picked his opponents to maximize his chances of victory. Khabib has had to fight all comers in the world's premier MMA organization that has over 90% of the sport's top talent. Khabib has never been able to pick an opponent, and in the sport of MMA compared to the sport of boxing, there are so many different styles and so many different ways to win or lose. Those factors, for my money, make Khabib's 28-0 record the most impressive streak in the history of combat sports. Not to mention the fact that Khabib executes the exact same game plan, fight in and fight out, and not a single person has been able to stop Khabib from enforcing his will on them. They know exactly what he wants to do to them, and they can do nothing about it. Now, you might be wondering, if these two fighters are both on unprecedented win streaks in the same division, then why have they not faced one another yet? And to answer that question, I'll have to give a history lesson. Tony and Khabib were scheduled to fight for the first time way back on December 11th, 2015, but Khabib was forced to pull out of the fight. The narrative about Khabib's career at that time was that Khabib was probably the best lightweight on the planet, but he couldn't stay competitively active because he was too prone to injury. A lot of people feared Khabib would never get past his injury-prone nature and might never realize his potential as one of the greatest MMA fighters ever. Thankfully, that is no longer the narrative. The bout was scheduled again for April 16th, 2016, just 5 months after the original booking. And on the second occasion, it was Tony Ferguson who had to bow out of the bout, just 11 days before the fight was scheduled because of a lung injury. After the second time the fight was canceled, the narrative was that perhaps this fight was cursed. Tony and Khabib may be the two best fighters in the division, but the UFC should just move on from the bout, as the contest appeared to be snake-bitten. But Khabib and Tony continued to dismantle every other competitor put in front of them, and the fight got scheduled for a third time, nearly a year later, on March 4th, 2017, and the interim lightweight title was on the line. Everyone thought that surely the fight wouldn't get canceled a third time. It appeared that finally the fans were going to get the chance to see these two active legends go toe-to-toe in the ultimate athletic proving ground. But then, literally the day before the fight, Khabib had to pull out of the bout because his kidneys were shutting down during his weight cut. Tony Ferguson earned the interim lightweight title in a bout with Kevin Lee in October of 2017, finally realizing his dream of becoming UFC champion. Then, in December of 2017, Khabib made weight easily and won a fight in what was perhaps the most impressive performance of his career at that point against a world-class fighter in Edson Barboza. Khabib's win over Barboza solidified his title shot against Tony Ferguson. Regardless of the fact that the bout between the two of them seemed like it wasn't meant to be, it simply had to be. The two of them were undeniably the two best in the division, and whoever would win between the two of them would undoubtedly be the lightweight GOAT and perhaps the GOAT of the entire sport. So despite the bout being seemingly not meant to be, it was booked for a fourth time. This time, the bout was scheduled to be for the undisputed lightweight championship at UFC 223 on April 7th, 2018. But on April 1st, in what many people thought was one of the cruelest April Fool's Day jokes ever, Tony Ferguson had to withdraw from the bout after he tore his knee by tripping on a cable while doing media to promote the championship bout. Khabib and Tony have been unbeatable in their UFC runs, and the promotion has been trying to get these two to cross paths for nearly 4.5 years. Since the bout was originally scheduled, Khabib and Tony have each beaten 6 world-class MMA fighters with relative ease. Each of them has had to pull out of the bout twice, so they're both equally to blame for this fight not coming to fruition. But they're also both undeniably the top 2 fighters in the division, so now this bout has been scheduled for a UFC record 5th time. These two warriors are scheduled to face each other on April 18th, 2020 at UFC 249. 4 years, 4 months, and 7 days since the bout was originally scheduled. No one has been capable of defeating either of these fighters since this bout was originally scheduled. GOAT status in the sport's most competitive division is on the line. You know what they say, 5th time's the charm. Make sure you have nowhere else to be on the 18th of April, because this is going to be the most competitive bout in the history of the sport.